Now, as we begin, I want you to picture a quiet morning in Los Angeles, long before the freeways and the rush. The year is 1926, and the sun rises gently over a city still finding its shape. The air smells of orange blossoms and damp earth after the night's coolness. Somewhere in a modest hospital on a hill, a baby girl is born. She is given the name Norma Jean Mortensen. Her mother, Gladys, works at a film laboratory, cutting and splicing negatives of other people's glamorous lives. The child enters a world already touched by the silver screen, but her own first days are filled with ordinary light. The pale yellow walls of a rented room, the sound of a trolley car in the distance, the soft wool of a hand-me-down blanket. The streets of Los Angeles in the 1920s hold a particular kind of stillness. Palm trees stand like silent sentinels against a pale blue sky. Small bungalows with red tile roofs dot the neighborhoods. Norma Jean will not stay long with her mother. The family's circumstances are fragile, and Gladys, struggling with her own health, knows she cannot give the baby a stable home. So begins a childhood of temporary addresses and borrowed love. The little girl is placed with a foster family, a devout couple named the Bollanders. They live in a neat wooden house in Hawthorne, a town just southwest of Los Angeles. The house has a porch and a small yard where the sun falls in long golden rectangles during the afternoon. Picture that little girl standing on the porch, her hair a light brown, her eyes already that startling shade of blue-gray. She wears a simple cotton dress, probably a little too large. The morning light catches the side of her face as she watches a neighbor's cat cross the garden. There is nothing extraordinary about the scene, only the deep peace of a suburban morning. The Bollanders are strict but kind. They teach her prayers and the rhythms of a simple, religious household. Sunday means a dress with a white collar, the smell of polished wood in a small church, and the sound of hymns drifting out the windows into the warm air. But even in this quiet refuge, loneliness settles around her like a soft cloak. The other children in the house are not her siblings. She knows, in the way children always do, that she is a guest here. In the afternoons, she walks to school along streets lined with eucalyptus trees. Their peeling bark reveals smooth, pale trunks. She collects the fallen leaves and crushes them between her fingers to release the sharp, clean scent. Sometimes she stops by a vacant lot where wildflowers grow, yellow mustard and purple lupin. The California light pours down, benevolent and even erasing shadows. In these moments, the world feels vast and full of possibility. As the years pass, Norma Jean moves from one home to another. She learns to be quiet, to observe. She spends hours looking at photographs of her mother, a woman with a delicate, melancholic beauty. She also sees images of a man she is told is her father, though she never meets him. The photographs become her talismans. She holds them near the window, where the light makes the glossy paper gleam. In those black and white faces, she discovers something magical, the way a person can be captured, perfected, preserved. Without knowing it, she is falling in love with the very essence of photography, with the tender promise that a moment of light can make a person immortal. The Great Depression settles over the country like a gray veil, but California remains a place of dreams for many. Norma Jean, still just a girl, lives for a time at the Los Angeles Orphans' Home. The building is imposing but not unkind, a large, solid structure with arched windows and a central courtyard. In the courtyard, a single palm tree rises toward the sky. The other girls become her temporary sisters. At night, they sleep in rows of iron beds, and the moonlight slips through the high windows, drawing silver stripes on the floor. She lies awake, listening to the breathing of the others, and imagines herself walking onto a movie set, wearing a gown that sparkles with 1,000 tiny beads. By the time she reaches adolescence, Norma Jean has learned to smooth the rough edges of her life with daydreams. She watches the ocean whenever she can, the long, gray-blue expanse at Santa Monica, the white foam whispering onto the sand. The Pacific light is softer here, blurred by the marine layer. She sits on the beach and draws patterns in the sand with a stick. The salt air tangles her hair. She feels, as many lonely children do, that she belongs to the sea and the sky, not to any particular house. It is a feeling that will stay with her always, a quiet anchor in the years of blinding fame to come. The summer she turns 16, a solution is presented to the problem of her unsettled life. She marries a neighbor boy named James Doherty. The ceremony is small and simple, held in a modest house with flowers picked from a friend's garden. She wears a white dress that fits her perfectly, and for a few hours she feels what it might be like to be safe, to be chosen. They move into a little house near the coast. In the mornings, the foghorn sounds from a lighthouse up the shore. She makes breakfast in a tiny kitchen with yellow curtains, and the steam from the kettle fogs the window. For a while, the world is gentle. But deep inside, the young woman is still dreaming, still waiting for the light to find her. Now the scene shifts. The young woman is no longer Norma Jean Doherty, but a factory worker, a wife in a small coastal town, living a life that feels borrowed. The year is 1944, and World War II still rumbles across the globe. Her husband is away, serving in the Merchant Marine. To contribute to the war effort, she works at the Radio Plane Company, a munitions plant in Burbank, inspecting parachutes and spraying airplane parts with a precise, careful hand. The factory is a vast, echoing space, filled with the smell of metal and machine oil. Fluorescent lights hang from the high ceiling, but near the entrance, the late afternoon California sun slices through the windows, turning dust motes into drifting gold. One day, an army photographer named David Conover comes to the plant. He is taking pictures of women contributing to the war, meant to boost morale. He notices the young woman with the wavy brown hair and the remarkable smile. Even in a simple work shirt and slacks, with a smudge of grease on her chin, she draws the eye. He asks if he can photograph her. She agrees, and something clicks, not just the shutter, but a recognition. In front of the camera, she comes alive. She is not shy. She is present, utterly calm and luminous. Conover is amazed. He encourages her to pursue modeling. The factory floor, with its harsh overhead lights, had hidden her, but his camera saw what the California sun had always known, a face made for the lens. The photographs circulate. Modeling agencies take notice. Soon Norma Jean is posing for pinup artists and commercial photographers. She is a brunette still, her hair curling softly around her face. She poses on sun-drenched beaches in suburban backyards, beside a bicycle, holding a beach ball. The images are wholesome, fresh, full of a natural, unaffected energy. The light in these early pictures is gentle, often the golden hour light of a Los Angeles afternoon. It wraps around her like a promise. She begins to earn a small living, and more importantly, she begins to understand the power of stillness. She learns how to tilt her head so the light catches her cheekbones, how to relax her mouth so that it holds a question, how to let her eyes speak volumes without a single word. She divorces her first husband and dyes her hair. The transformation is not overnight, but it is deliberate. The brown gives way to a honey blonde, then to a platinum so pale it seems to hold the light itself. Her hair becomes a beacon. The studios begin to call. In 1946, she signs a contract with 20th Century Fox. An executive suggests the name Marilyn, after a Broadway star, and she chooses Monroe, her mother's maiden name. Norma Jean fades into the past, and Marilyn Monroe steps forward, not as a fully formed star yet, but as a young woman on the threshold of something immense. She walks through the studio gates for the first time with a quiet thrill. The lot is a small city of soundstages and backlit streets, where the Old West sits next to a New York brownstone. The early roles are tiny, a girl on a street, a telephone operator, a face in a crowd. But even in these flickering moments, she is magnetic. Directors and cinematographers notice how the light behaves around her. Her skin seems to glow, almost ethereal, especially in black and white. The cinematographers whisper among themselves about a certain quality she has, a softness that needs no diffusion filter. She works hard, attending acting classes, voice lessons. She walks the studio lot alone in the quiet moments, past the facades of houses that are only fronts, past the prop shops where fake flowers bloom eternally. In these walks, the California sun beats down on the plaster and canvas, and the whole world feels like a beautiful illusion she is only beginning to understand. She moves into a small apartment in Hollywood. It is a simple place, a single room with a Murphy bed and a window that overlooks a courtyard with a fountain. The fountain plays a soft, repetitive music that soothes her to sleep. In the morning, she makes coffee and sits by the window, watching the sun climb over the rooftops. She is still lonely, but it is a different loneliness now, the solitude of a chrysalis. On her days off, she visits the public library, losing herself in books of poetry and psychology. She reads in a quiet corner, near a window that filters the light through Venetian blinds, painting stripes on the pages. She is beginning to understand herself, to wrestle with the gap between the public's perception and her own inner life. The decade turns. By 1950, her film roles grow more substantial. She appears in The Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve, and critics start to pay attention. The camera caresses her. In a famous scene from All About Eve, she stands in a high-necked white dress, her bearing regal, her voice a silvery murmur. The set around her is a drawing room filled with chintz furniture and soft lamplight. The whole scene glows with an amber warmth, and she moves through it like a dream figure. Audiences lean forward in their seats. Who is she? The question travels across America. But Marilyn herself, on those sound stages, between takes, often stood quietly, wrapped in a robe, her script in hand, a private island of calm amid the controlled chaos of a film set. Her home life remained modest even as her fame grew. She still loved walking through the Hollywood Hills at dusk, when the lights of the city began to blink on in the valley below. The air would cool, and the scent of sage and jasmine would drift from the gardens. She would stand on a curve of Mulholland Drive and look down at the grid of streets, each one holding a story, a hope, a dream just like hers. In those moments, she felt both small and infinite. The city that built her was now beginning to kneel at her feet, but she was still the same girl who had once counted clouds from a foster home porch. The gentle California twilight wrapped around her like a companionable silence, and she carried that silence into the bright, demanding years to come. Let us step away from the silver screen and into the private world of Marilyn Monroe at home. By the early 1950s, she is a rising star, but her domestic life remains surprisingly simple. She rents a small, Spanish-style bungalow in Beverly Hills, not far from the studio. The house is painted a soft stucco white, with a red-tiled roof and a tiny courtyard enclosed by bougainvillea. The magenta blossoms spill over the wall like a vibrant waterfall, and the flagstone path is warm under bare feet. In the early morning, before the city stirs, she opens the French doors to let in the cool air. The scent of jasmine mingles with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. This is her quiet hour, a pocket of stillness before the hair and makeup teams arrive. Inside, the bungalow is a nest of soft fabrics and gentle light. She has draped the windows with sheer white curtains that diffuse the sun into a milky glow. The floors are polished hardwood, scattered with a few Persian rugs in faded rose and teal. A bookcase overflows with novels, poetry, and psychology texts, Dostoevsky, Rilke, Freud. Her friends often express surprise at the breadth of her reading, but she simply smiles. In the solitude of the morning, she often reads a passage while sitting in a chintz armchair, her legs tucked under her. The world outside, the gossip columns, the studio demands, fades away. The only sounds are the ticking of a small clock and the occasional call of a mourning dove. Her kitchen is small but cheerful, with yellow tiles and a window overlooking a tiny herb garden. She grows rosemary and mint in terracotta pots. She is not a particularly confident cook, but she finds comfort in the simple rituals, filling the kettle, slicing a grapefruit, arranging butter cookies on a plate. She sometimes invites a close friend for a late breakfast, and they sit at the little kitchen table, the sunlight pooling on the checkered cloth. The conversation is easy, full of laughter and pauses. In these moments, she is not Marilyn Monroe but Norma Jean, the woman who loves the feel of a ceramic cup in her hands and the taste of honey on toast. As the morning progresses, the bungalow transforms into a preparation space. An elderly makeup artist, white-haired and gentle, arrives with a leather case full of brushes and creams. Marilyn settles into a chair by the window, and the artist goes to work. The routine is meditative, the soft stroke of a powder puff, the careful application of red lipstick, the precise curl of an eyelash. She gazes out the window at the garden while her face is painted into the icon the world knows. The light shifts slowly across the room, climbing the walls. She breathes deeply, centering herself. The makeup artist tells stories about the old days, and the room is filled with a grandmotherly warmth. It is a sacred, feminine space, far from the leering cameras. When she is alone again, she sometimes practices her scripts in front of a full-length mirror in the bedroom. The bedroom is a sanctuary of pale blues and creams. A chenille bedspread lies smooth across the bed, and a ceiling fan turns slowly overhead, its shadow dancing on the walls. She recites her lines softly, not with theatrical force, but with a quiet, searching intensity. She tries different inflections, different ways of holding her head. The mirror reflects a woman who is both deeply familiar and utterly mysterious to herself. She often pauses and simply looks at her own reflection, not with vanity but with a kind of tender curiosity. Who is this person the world wants so desperately? She reaches out and touches the glass, leaving a faint fingerprint. The afternoons in the bungalow are for rest and renewal. She draws the curtains and lies on the sofa, a cashmere throw pulled over her. The room is dim and cool. Sometimes she puts a record on the phonograph, Chopin's Nocturnes, maybe, or a mellow jazz ballad. The music drifts through the rooms like a gentle tide. She closes her eyes and lets her mind wander. She thinks about the characters she plays, women who are often undervalued but who possess a hidden shrewdness. She thinks about the ocean she loves, the Pacific sunsets that seem to last forever. The house holds her safely, its walls thick and white, muffling the noise of the outside world. Beyond the bungalow, the neighborhood is a quiet, leafy enclave. Tall palm trees line the streets, and the sidewalks are dappled with shade. In the late afternoon, she sometimes takes a walk, wearing a headscarf and large sunglasses, hoping to be anonymous. She strolls past other Spanish-style homes, their windows glowing with a soft, interior light. The air smells of cut grass and gardenias. A gardener trims a hedge, the rhythmic snip of his shears a soothing sound. She picks a stray flower from a low-hanging branch and twirls it between her fingers. For those few blocks, she is just a woman walking, free from the weight of her own image. The golden hour arrives, painting everything with a honeyed light, and she returns home feeling renewed. Evenings in the bungalow are a time of quiet preparation for sleep. She takes a warm bath, the water scented with lavender oil. The bathroom is a small, tiled room with a single window that looks out onto a starry sky. She lies in the water, letting the warmth unwind the tension in her shoulders. The only light comes from a single candle flickering on the rim of the tub. Afterward, she wraps herself in a thick terry cloth robe and writes in a journal, sometimes fragments of poetry, sometimes simply lists of things she is grateful for, the taste of a ripe peach, the sound of rain on the roof, the kindness of a stranger. She turns off the lamp, and the room sinks into a deep, velvety darkness. Outside, the bougainvillea rustles in the night breeze, and the star sleeps, dreaming of nothing and everything. Now we travel to where the magic happened, the sound stages and backlots of 20th Century Fox. For Marilyn Monroe, the film set was both a workplace and a sanctuary. Here, under the controlled blaze of arc lights, she became fully alive. By 1953, she was the studio's most radiant star, and each film set was a carefully constructed world. We begin on the set of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, in a soundstage that smells of sawdust and hairspray. The scene is the famous Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number. The set is a stylized ballroom, all deep red velvet, curling gold staircases, and cascades of crystal. The lights are enormous, hanging from the ceiling like mechanical suns, their heat palpable. Between takes, the crew moves quietly, and Marilyn stands in the center of it all, wrapped in a pink satin robe, breathing slowly. She wears a gown of shocking pink satin, with a giant bow at the back and long gloves that reach past her elbows. The costume is heavy, with layers of fabric and boning, but she wears it with a lightness that belies its weight. The choreographer walks her through the steps one more time. She listens intently, her head tilted. Then the director calls for quiet, and the playback begins. The orchestra swells. She moves down the staircase, surrounded by tuxedoed dancers, her arms extended gracefully. The camera captures every sparkle of the diamond jewelry, every shimmer of the pink fabric. The light is designed to wrap her in a halo, separating her from the darker background. It took hours to light this single shot, but the result is timeless, a woman who seems to float on a cloud of glamour. Between scenes, Marilyn retreats to her dressing room, a small bungalow on the studio lot. The room is cozy, filled with fresh flowers sent by admirers. She sits at a vanity mirror ringed with light bulbs, and a makeup artist touches up her lipstick. A radio plays softly in the corner, perhaps a Nat King Cole melody. She hums along, completely at ease. She then picks up a book from the side table, something by Thomas Wolfe or Proust, and reads a paragraph while the chaos of the set continues outside. This is her secret life, the life of the mind. The studio executives want a platinum bombshell, but she insists on bringing depth to her roles. The dressing room is her cocoon, a place where she can gather herself before stepping back into the artificial glare. The next year, 1954, brings an even more iconic image. We're on the set of The 7-Year Itch, but the scene is not on a soundstage. It is on a New York City street, Lexington Avenue, in the middle of the night. A crowd has gathered behind barricades to watch. The air is humid, the sidewalk still radiating the heat of the day. The shot is simple. She stands over a subway grate as a train rushes beneath, and the wind billows her white halter dress up around her. The crew has set up enormous fans to augment the natural burst of air. The cinematographer has carefully positioned the lights to make the white dress glow against the dark buildings. She is barefoot, her platinum hair perfectly coiffed, her expression a mixture of delight and innocence. They shoot the scene again and again, late into the night. Each time, she holds the front of her dress with her hands, laughing while the air roars upward. The flashbulbs of the onlookers pop like distant lightning. Joe DiMaggio, her husband at the time, stands in the crowd, his face darkening. But that moment of tension is outside our frame. The scene we hold in our memory is the one the camera captured, pure, effervescent joy. The white dress rises like a cloud, the woman's silhouette perfectly etched against the city night. When the director finally calls cut, she wraps the white coat around her shoulders and walks away through the crowd, smiling shyly. The image that remains, however, is eternal, a symbol of summer, of release, of a beauty that feels accidental but is, in truth, perfectly crafted. Back on the Fox lot, another set comes to life. For Bus Stop, released in 1956, Marilyn transforms into Sherry, a saloon singer from the Ozarks. The set is a snowy, small-town street, and the camera captures the pale winter light of a fictional Montana. She wears ripped fishnet stockings and a tattered costume, her face makeup deliberately smudged. The performance is raw, tender, full of emotional cracks. The set is quiet during her close-ups. The crew holds its breath. The camera moves in slowly, and she delivers a monologue that reveals a depth no one expected. The lighting is softer here, more naturalistic, reflecting the shift in her ambition as an actress. After the scene, she retreats to the wings, and there are tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the release of having given something true. On every set, Marilyn had a habit of being slightly late, not out of arrogance, but out of a paralyzing nervousness. Yet once she arrived, she was utterly present, a perfectionist who would demand take after take until she felt the rhythm was right. The crew, initially impatient, came to respect her instincts. They watched her study the script in a corner, her lips moving silently, her pencil making notes in the margins. She fought for better lighting, a better camera angle, a line change that made her character more human. The cinematographers adored her because she understood light as a collaborator. She knew exactly where to stand to catch the key light, how to turn her face so the shadow fell beautifully along her cheekbone. This was not vanity, it was a deep, almost architectural understanding of cinema. Between films, she would wander the empty sound stages of the studio, now dark and silent. The giant curtains hung still, the scaffoldings and backdrops stored away. The quiet was absolute. She loved these spaces in their dormant state, filled with the ghosts of films already made. She would stand where a ballroom had been, or a Parisian street, and remember the lines she had spoken. The vast, cathedral-like space of the soundstage, with its high-grid ceiling and coiled cables, was a kind of temple to her. Here, under the warmth of those now dark lamps, she had become the woman the world adored. And she knew that light, once captured on celluloid, could never really die. It would continue to glow in darkened theaters, long after the sets were struck and the flowers had wilted.